Who is covered by Oklahoma's workers' compensation law? That's going to be the question that we're addressing today. I don't know that we'll be answering it because it's really going to be fact specific. But I'm attorney Todd Wilhoit. I've been practicing law in Oklahoma since 1991. I've helped a lot of people with their workers' compensation claims. But we start off with the general premise that if you're an employee, you're working for someone else in Oklahoma, you may be covered by the Oklahoma Workers' Compensation Act. And the Oklahoma Workers' Compensation Act has a lot of specific people who it does not include. Some of the people that are not included are the people who are already covered under another federal act, such as federal employees have their own Workers' Compensation Act that covers them. And then you also have longshoremen and harbor workers who are covered under their act and the Jones Act. Typically, those may be people in Oklahoma that work at the Port of Catoosa. They're covered under that act, and so they may not be covered under the Oklahoma Workers' Compensation Act. But again, it's very specific on whether you're covered under one or the other. Other people who may not be covered under the Oklahoma Workers' Compensation Act are people who work in agriculture, ranching, or horticulture for a small operator whose previous annual payroll was less than $100,000. And then other people that may be excluded are real estate agents and brokers who are paid on a commission basis. They're specifically excluded from Workers' Compensation Act in Oklahoma. Other people who may be excluded are people who are in a work training program administered by the Department of Human Services. Other ones we can think of are typically small family businesses, family business that has 5 or fewer employees and everybody lives in the same household. Those are typically excluded from the workers' compensation coverage. Again, they all have to be relatives in that small business. Other people who may not be covered are youth sports workers or sports league people who work in there, and it's for an organization that's exempt under federal income tax requirements. Other folks can be excluded would be business owners, and typically we're thinking of a sole proprietor, a partner, a member of an LLC that owns 10% or more of the LLC. Those people are excluded unless they ask to be put in it. They can elect to be covered by the Oklahoma Workers' Compensation Act if they want to. If they elect to be covered, then they can be covered. Volunteers is another category that most volunteers are not covered by the Oklahoma Workers' Compensation Act. However, there are exceptions for those people who are volunteer firefighters, people who volunteer in law enforcement, people who volunteer in emergency medical areas. Those people actually have a specific thing where they are included, and some people under the Oklahoma National Guard, they are included under the Workers' Compensation Act. Another place that's not included is domestic or casual workers, domestic servants or casual workers, folks who are working around a personal residence where the personal residence payroll for the last year was less than $50,000. Another area that is excluded are owner-operators of trucks. If you're an owner-operator, typically you're going to be excluded. Same thing with those that are owner-operators of tow trucks or towing vehicles. There may be exceptions depending upon how the agreement is made. If it's a typical owner-operator who owns their truck outright, then they're going to probably be excluded. If it's something where they have a lease that's really disguised as an it's an employment contract disguised as a lease, those will have to be looked at on a fact basis specific to that case. Anyway, those are kind of the general areas. Again, if you think you may or may not be covered by workers' compensation, you should visit with a workers' compensation attorney to find out specifically under your circumstances if you are covered by the Oklahoma Workers' Compensation Act and if you're entitled to receive benefits in the event you're injured or obtain an illness or something like that from work. I'm Todd Wilhoit. I'm an attorney here in Oklahoma practicing workers' compensation law.